Hope everybody's doing okay. This is Slaves of Satan Part 21, and I'll be talking about somebody that I definitely did not expect to make a video about when I started the series. There's been a lot so far that I didn't really intend on, but this is probably the one that was most out of the thought process when I began this, and that's Bram Stoker, the creator of Dracula. And while I'm doing this, I also want to take out the time to answer the question, do vampires exist? And I know that the vast, overwhelming majority of people will say no. Probably, maybe 1 out of 1,000 might say yes, or I don't know. So I'm going to answer the question, do they exist or no? And the answer is that it falls somewhere down the middle, just like most answers. It's somewhere in the middle. So they do exist, but they don't exist the way people think they do. And first, before I talk about personal experience, let's go to the highest authority, which is the Bible. Because nothing beats the Bible, and nothing is better than the Word of God. And one of my favorite things about the Bible is that one verse can mean so many different things. One verse can mean 5 different things without contradicting each other. Or some verses like this one can be taken literal or metaphorically. Because something can be said in the Bible to give an example, or it can be said as something that's literal, but but both can be right without making the other wrong. So Proverbs 30 verse 14. There is a generation whose teeth are like swords, and whose fangs are like knives, to devour the poor from the earth and the needy from among them. So you can take that as a metaphor of just somebody being greedy, or you can take it literal. And I'll answer the question by saying it's both. Um, there is people out here that that act like a sword, or who's leeching off other people and taking from who they can. Then there is literal people out here that do have razor sharp teeth, and I'll get to why that is here in a second. Um, I'm gonna read. There is many more verses that links to vampires and blood and drinking in the Bible. I'll read one more after this too. The book of Joel, chapter 1, verse 6. For a nation has come up against my land, strong and without number. His teeth are of a lion, and he has the fangs of a fierce lion. So, same way here. You can take it both ways, but it can still be true. It can be talking about somebody that has the characteristics of a lion or some type of wild beast, or it can be somebody that actually has fangs. And I believe the answer is both. And let's look at blood drinking in the Old Testament in Leviticus. Okay, Leviticus 17, starting at verse 11. No, starting at verse 10, sorry. And whatever man of the house of Israel or of the strangers who dwell among you who eats any blood, I will set my face against that person who eats blood, and will cut him off from his people. For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you upon the altar to make atonement for your souls. For it is the blood that makes atonement for the soul. Therefore I said to the children of Israel, no one among you shall eat blood, nor shall any stranger who dwells among you eat blood. Whatever man of the children of Israel, of the strangers who dwell among you, who hunts and catches any animal or bird that may be eaten, he shall pour out its blood and cover it with dust. For it is the life of all flesh. Its blood sustains its life. Therefore I said to the children of Israel, you shall not eat the blood of any flesh, for the life of the flesh is its blood. Whoever eats it shall be cut off. Okay, so we see about the fangs and we see about the blood, and I've spoken about this in many other videos about the explanation for about the blood drinking. And like I've explained many times, I'm not going to go in detail this time, but because in so many other videos, the people at the hierarchy in the world, um, the people with money that most people can't even comprehend, just look at before and after pictures and Google adrenochrome, and that's all I gotta say. The life of the flesh is in the blood. Young blood has the biggest effect, but but a vampire will want all of it. And let's talk about the teeth. And I'm not gonna go into specific detail because there's really no reason to. But I used to do things that involved blood, sexually, um, with some of my old partners while I was in apostasy, and I wasn't living for the Lord, and know that there was no cutting or anything violent, but in some type of way blood was consumed for me, and I'm not scared to admit it. I will give my full testimony, and and both of my eye teeth grew substantially, so I'm living proof that it does happen. All right, now so Bram Stoker, while there's not a gigantic amount of information about what he was into in his alone time, this is one of the situations where we have to look at the type of people who he hung out with. But let's start out with Bram Stoker was a member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which a lot of people that I've talked about has been in. And obviously he's known for writing Dracula. I think everyone's probably heard of that. I believe 1898 is when it came out. And back to the vampire thing for a minute. Some of it is true, some of it's not. Like I've heard of people that claim that was claiming to live over 500 years from drinking blood, and I can't prove it, but I can't dispute it either. It might be true, but what's not true is how Hollywood will show them turning into mist and sliding under the door. That's all Hollywood. Them looking sexy. That's all Hollywood. Um, the garlic thing is kind of iffy. Um, the pale skin is true to people that actually took it far enough to become an actual vampire, because there's vampirism, and then there's turning into a vampire. Thank God that he stepped in me and didn't let me actually turn into one. But about half it's Hollywood, half it's not. And there is turning into things like bats, but that's not a vampire. That's something totally different that people do. But let's look at some of his associates. He is friends with Conan Doyle, who is was the famous author that wrote the Sherlock Holmes books. And I know people will be thinking, but what's wrong with him? He was just an author. He was just a good author. But he was part of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. He was also friends with Oscar Wilde, another occultist that was in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. And Bram Stoker was invited to the White House twice. And I imagine people that understand how things work know that a regular person absolutely does not get invited to the White House. Because there's plenty of directors today that have made what's considered a good movie, and you don't see them getting invited to the White House. If I had to take a guess, he was invited to teach whoever was in there something. He was friends with Walt Whitman, someone else who's been accused of occultism, and he was. There was always a rumor going around that Bram Stoker was homosexual, and a letter showed that after he died. But you can't really. I don't like to accuse somebody of being that because it's something so serious. But what I will say is people that end up getting involved with any type of magic or occultism or anything like that usually ends up either becoming bisexual or having thoughts of being bisexual, because and they usually won't be completely gay or completely lesbian, and that's because the devil likes confusion, so he likes to put confusion in their mind, so they're not sure what they like. And if you watch my past videos, you'll see that's a very, very common trend with all these people. And he was a believer in something called mesmerism. And mesmerism is uh, well, it's not really religious, so it's never a doctrine. I would just say it's a theory. It's a theory that we're all being controlled by what they call animal magnetism, which is an invisible fluid going through our blood, and that we're basically all possessed by that and have no actual free will, which I believe is complete nonsense. But these people believe this really weird stuff. He was also friends with J.W. Brody, another occultist. He was friends with Pamela Smith, who was one of the heavy hitters in the Golden Dawn. She helped author Edward Waite create the White Rider Tarot deck, which is where how tarot cards became popular and normalized, which is very unfortunate. And Pamela Smith channeled the all the artwork to those. Um, I've made a video about author Edward Waite. I believe it's part 13, and I'll probably do one on Pamela too. And now the we see the trend that doesn't end. Bram Stoker was a Freemason, which should not surprise anyone, because out of these 21 people, I believe 18 has been a Freemason. I believe either 17 or 18, and if they're not a Freemason, they were either something else, or it just can't be proven what they were. So this is just an example of the old saying, "Birds of a feather flock together." There's I see no way that Bram Stoker was not an occultist. Um, all the hits are there. Golden Dawn. I'm obsessed with vampirism, Freemason, homosexual, rumors, invited to the White House. So you can make your own decision with this one. One of the reasons I decided to make this is so I could also cover the vampirism at the same time. And if you have any more questions, ask. But if you always wanted to know if vampires exist, I gave you your answer. Have a good rest of the day.